Que bueno, mi gente. Calix Boxing here. Happy Friday. It is Friday, 5 p.m. Central on the dot down here at Calix headquarters studios down here in South Louisiana. I appreciate y'all coming through in the chat. I'm in the UK. It's absolutely huge. And Benn versus Eubank Jr. is going to be big. I can already tell based off the buzz. I can tell off the press conference that I was watching this morning. The numbers in the chat rooms, the number of people watching this press conference this morning, this is going to be big. I misread this thing. Look, I'm the first to say when I'm wrong about something, and I misread how big this fight is going to be when the rumors initially started. And I'll be getting into that here pretty soon in the show. A lot of stuff because there's a lot of breaking stuff today. As far as betting odds, as far as Tyson Fury retiring for the 1,254,854 time, more retirements than defenses, pay-per-views, the amount of pay-per-views, Lee Wood versus Leo Santa Cruz is going to happen. Usyk versus Joshua, we still don't know who's going to be carrying this fight here in the States. The WBA now has 10 divisions with only one champion, so that is good. A lot of stuff going on in boxing today. Y'all make sure to hit that like button as y'all come in. And as always, most people watch this in the archives, so make sure you're leaving comments below in the archives. I've been enjoying our chats down in the comment section for the archive viewers. Desperately trying to secure tickets. Yeah, you better get on that, man, because that's going to be a big event out in the UK. And I hope Conor Benn washes Eubank Jr. I hope he destroys him. More on that in a minute. OJ22, man, what's going on? Yep. Appreciate all y'all. Peace, Logan Little. My boy G Funky. He was talking about Canelo versus Golovkin. Make sure to go watch his video of his live earlier with Mighty Max Boxing. Appreciate you passing through, my man. The UK fans always show out for their fighters. They do. And that's a legacy fight. It's a novelty fight. It's passing the torch down to their sons, and now their sons are going to see who's the best, right? So a lot of buzz there, and it's going to be a big fight. But first, I want to touch on Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury is the first fighter I've ever seen in my life who announces a new trainer, and 2 sleeps later, the dude retires. What do you have a trainer for if you're retiring, bro? What do you have a trainer for? Are you training for retirement? Wednesday, new trainer. Thursday, he flies out to Iceland to try to pick a fight with the Icelandic tough man champion, the dude who chops down the most trees in less than 5 minutes. The dude who pulls 18-wheelers the best with a rope tied around his waist. And then Friday, he retires. And then last week, it was I'm fighting Chisora a third time. And before that is I'm going to fight the UFC guy. This dude can't make up his mind. He's all over the place, but there's a method to his madness is the point of all this. More retirements than defenses. So I got a lot to say about this. First of all, I love what's going on with AJ and Usyk. Interesting to see how that fight's going to play out because as I'm watching their training camps, as I'm seeing this develop, as I see the betting odds start to materialize from top to bottom, AJ, a live dog in that fight against Usyk. He's a live dog. The odds are closer than people think. And from top to bottom, Usyk by decision and Usyk by knockout are the 2 top most likely scenarios, but AJ by stoppage, AJ by decision, not far behind him. The reason I love that fight is AJ, it seems like he has bad intentions coming into this fight. It seems like he's going to be more aggressive. And then Usyk beefing up. So what that tells me is a lot more muscle. He's going to be sitting on counter punches early in that fight. He expects AJ to be more open, more aggressive in this fight. And that puts on the table the possibility of a knockout on both sides. So that's good to see. I love what I'm seeing from those fighters because I'm seeing structure from those fighters. I'm seeing 2 guys who are stable. They have a goal. It's transparent. They want to be undisputed. Although AJ had his little moment where he said he didn't care about belts. He's going to drop the belts. I don't believe that either. But you have two guys who have been stable. They want to be the heavyweight champion, their behavior in the ring and outside of the ring has, for the most part, been stable. With Fury, it's completely opposite. And this is what makes this tough. What I do is, because somebody may come across this video and just figure I'm hating on Tyson Fury, and that's not it. I get it on Twitter all the time. I talk bad about a certain fighter in a certain context, and they think that I hate that fighter. That's not the case, because I got a lot of respect for Tyson Fury and what he's done inside the ring when he's been in big fights. He's the type of dude who rises to the occasion and wins big fights. As the light gets brighter, the big lights, he shines more. Did it against Klitschko, did it in the 3 Wilder fights. And I appreciate what Fury and Wilder gave me in the 3rd fight. And that brings me to Wilder. Is the Wilder fans are mad at me on Twitter, calling me a racist and all kind of stuff because I talked bad about the pay-per-view happening October 15th. I have no problem with Wilder fighting Helenius. None. Coming back from Tyson Fury beating him up with egg weights in his gloves and his trainer poisoning him. That took a big toll on Deontay Wilder. Coming off of 3 straight losses to Tyson Fury, and those were 3 straight losses, 2 of them knockouts. But I appreciate what Deontay Wilder has given me in the ring as well, emptying himself in the Tyson Fury fight. I appreciate what he gave me in that fight. I've been wanting Deontay Wilder to come back. I've said over and over and over, Deontay Wilder by far is a net positive when it comes to boxing. The division is more exciting when he's in it, when he's active. So I can big up Deontay Wilder over and over and over again, but they'll see this one video about me criticizing a pay-per-view, Deontay Wilder, and bash me and call me all kind of names for bashing the pay-per-view, for saying this isn't a pay-per-view worthy fight. And this is what people do. Like, you can't just call it up the middle. This is what makes this tough. They'd rather you just nut hug a certain fighter 100% of the time or bash a fighter 100% of the time. And that's just not the case. You're not going to be consistent that way. So I appreciate what Deontay Wilder has done. But when it comes to Tyson Fury, appreciate what he has given me in the ring when he's been active. The issue is I want my heavyweight champion, my lineal heavyweight champion of the world, to strive for undisputed, to want to be the heavyweight champion of the world. And on top of that, show structure, show consistency outside of the ring. So when you're saying, even if we know what he's doing here, right? He's using this all for leverage. He knows AJ versus Usyk is coming up. He knows that he has to make this about himself some kind of way to take the luster off of that fight and to give himself more leverage when it comes to the negotiation table, because once September, October rolls around, they're going to be trying to negotiate this fight. Bob Arum keeps coming out and saying, don't worry about what Tyson Fury is saying. Don't worry about it. We'll get him to the negotiation table. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. You can't trust what Tyson Fury is saying. His own promoter is saying that. So when it comes to Tyson Fury, it's frustrating to watch from the outside looking in, because you're talking about the fighting UFC guy. Then you're talking about fighting the tough man guy. Then you're talking about fighting Chisora a 3rd time. Then you come out and retire. So now he's retired, officially retired. So I have a couple questions, and people in the chat can try to answer these questions for me, because I know I have an intelligent chat. You got to stop listening to Tyson Fury. He makes so much nonsense. Yep. I'm expecting an exciting fight between AJ and Usyk. Looking forward to this fight. Fury's mindset: be the best troll ever in boxing. Yeah, be the best troll ever. And on top of that, be the first fighter of all time to retire more times than you actually defended your belt. So that brings me to my first question. What do you want to see happen to this WBC belt right now? And what do you think will happen? Do you think the WBC should strip a dude that's retired and just say, you know what? There's this heavyweight championship fighting next weekend. It's for the 3 other belts. So let's just strip this belt, put this belt on the line for those guys and just make AJ versus Usyk 2 undisputed. We know that's not going to happen. So we take that off the table. So my next question is, are they just going to allow Tyson Fury, the WBC, to lay on this belt the way Leo Santa Cruz laid on his 126-pound belt, featherweight belt, for 3.5 years without even competing in the division? The WBA allowed him to do that. Do they allow Tyson Fury to, although he's retired and he's using retirement for leverage, will they also allow a retired fighter to use their belt as leverage for negotiations in an undisputed fight? A retired fighter. Do they strip him and then allow Deontay Wilder and Helenius to fight for the vacant belt? Do they make the belt vacant and allow them to fight for it? Do they allow Wilder, Helenius versus Joe Joyce, Joseph Parker? Let's say it's Wilder versus Joe Joyce fight for the vacant belt after stripping Tyson Fury? Or do they just allow Tyson Fury to lay on this belt? And that's what I think happens here. What I think is going on here is we can't trust anything Tyson Fury says. It's all cap, as the young kids say. All cap. It's all cap. They're going to allow, he's saying all this stuff to create more leverage, create more buzz for himself, stay in the news cycles. I think he's clever like a fox. Clever like a fox. There's no, look, I understand people are out there saying mental health. He's got mental health issues, all that stuff. I think this guy knows exactly what he's doing right now. He's saying all this nonsense. And what I'm saying is, I just want a heavyweight champion who is going to be a heavyweight champion and defend the belts once he becomes heavyweight champion. And we're not going to get all this nonsense, leverage, posturing. And I want someone consistent to be the heavyweight champion of the world. So when I look at that, who could possibly be the most consistent guy, the best guy for boxing to be the heavyweight champion of the world? And to me, it's Anthony Joshua. And the tough part about that is he's the least likely in this scenario to become the heavyweight champion, in my opinion. I favor Usyk to win next weekend over Joshua. Even if Joshua were to beat Usyk, I think that would be better for boxing if Joshua were to beat Usyk, because I think Tyson Fury would be more willing to come to the table, more willing to negotiate, and that fight is more realistic to make because it's such a big fight. And I think Fury believes Joshua is the easier fight of the two. When it comes to Usyk, and the reason I believe this is because Fury has said it. Fury has said this guy's a blown-up middleweight. Oh, he's just a cruiserweight. He doesn't bring anything to the table, yada, 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 yada. I don't think he wants to fight Usyk. I don't think he sees it as more of a challenge for less money. I think that's how Tyson Fury sees this. So that's why I say I think it's better if Joshua wins that fight next weekend, but I think it's less likely. I think Usyk wins that fight and we get a stalemate, and Tyson Fury is getting in front of things and starting to use all of this for leverage when it comes to possibly having to negotiate a fight with Alexander Usyk in September, October, November. But it's just not a good look. I know why he's doing it, and I think most people know why he's doing it. I think most people know how to deal with Tyson Fury at this point. Yeah, you're retired again. You're retired again. You're retired for like the 12th time. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, you're retired. You'll be back. I think most people know how to deal with it. Yeah, you're going to fight the tough man from Iceland. Yeah, okay. The actor from Game of Thrones. Yeah, okay. Sure you are. Most people know how to deal with this, but what I'm saying is it's still not a good look because it still gives off the perception that you're all over the place. You just on Wednesday announced a new trainer. You just announced a new trainer. And then on Friday, you're announcing your retirement. So it just seems like he should get on the same page with himself as to how he's going to play this thing out. Because people who are following are looking at this thing like, why would he just announce a new trainer if he's going to retire on Friday? Did decide on Friday that he's going to announce his retirement? But my other question for the chat would be, and for people in the comment section below, Tyson Fury retiring, you now take him out the rankings. He's going to keep his WBC belt, at least for the time being. But you take him out the heavyweight rankings because he's retired. He's no longer officially, as of today, an active heavyweight fighter. So you take him out the rankings. So that makes Usyk number 1, AJ number 2. So what does that mean? And I saw, what's his name from Ring Magazine? Michael Montero asked this question on Twitter earlier, and it's an interesting question. Does this now make the rematch between AJ and Usyk the lineal heavyweight championship of the world? Number 1, number 2. They're the 2 top guys now. Fury is no longer number 1. He's retired. So on top of this being for the WBA, WBO, IBF, is it now for the ring belt? Is it now for the lineal championship? Number 1, number 2 in the division. As far as I know, when it comes to the Ring Magazine belt, if it's for the 2 top guys in the weight class, they're fighting for the ring belt. So AJ and Usyk are now number 1 and number 2 in the division. So does the winner of this fight pick off the lineal belt? It's an interesting question. And these are the questions I have when it comes to Tyson Fury retiring. And I think it's questions we need. We need clarity. We need transparency in the sport of boxing. We need the sanctioning bodies to do their jobs. We need the sanctioning bodies more than ever to get on their jobs quick, to get on them quick. We can't have sanctioning bodies laying on belts because letting fighters lay on belts and being inconsistent with appeals and anything, mandatories. We need more consistency and transparency than ever. Because a fight that was announced today, Lee Wood versus Leo Santa Cruz, it's happening. We didn't know if it was going to happen because the split is 75% for Leo Santa Cruz, 25% for Lee Wood. And the purse bid was supposed to happen today. And apparently the 2 sides came to an agreement. And they had to come to an agreement or the fight wasn't going to happen because the WBA said, we're sticking to our 75-25 split. We're not allowing Lee Wood's team to have a bigger percentage of the split. And Lee Wood saying, well, how does this dude have a 75% split over me when he hasn't fought in the division in 3.5 years? And he has a point. But this is what inconsistency leads to. When the WBA lets a dude lay on a belt for 3.5 years without defending it, it leads to cloudiness. It leads to a guy like Lee Wood finally getting his shot and saying, you know what, this dude does not deserve 75% of the split. He does not deserve 75% of the pie because I'm coming off of 2 upset knockout victories in the division, and this dude hasn't fought in the division in 3.5 years. And that's the WBA's fault. And the WBA should at least be able to say, you know what? We'll give you a 40% split instead of the 25. Because we allowed this dude to lay on the belt for 3.5 years. But this is why more than ever, we need sanctioning bodies to do their jobs quick. We need them to come to an agreement amongst themselves quickly on what they're going to do when a decision like this happens, where a Tyson Fury says, I'm retiring. I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight. And we all know he's going to fight. It's a fake retirement. So call him on his bluff. Say, you know what, Tyson? You know what, Tyson? You want to retire on Friday after announcing a trainer on Wednesday? We're going to call your bluff. We're going to take your belt. And then maybe Tyson Fury will come back to the table and say, you know what? I was just kidding. I'm going to come to the negotiation table. And that's what I'm saying. That's what they need to do. So Tyson Fury retires for the 87th time. More retirements than defenses. And this is where we're at with Tyson Fury in the heavyweight division. And we need structure. We need consistency in the division. And hopefully Joshua versus Usyk next weekend will get us closer to that. And hopefully Tyson Fury comes to the table and negotiates properly, because what I expect to happen is Tyson Fury will say these two guys are getting $40 million for this fight each, I want $1 gazillion to fight for undisputed. It's gonna be tough negotiations. When it comes to Conor Benn versus Eubank Jr., when this fight was, when I first started hearing the rumors about Benn versus Eubank Jr., I was saying to myself, I don't like it. I don't like it. And the reason I don't like it is right now, 5 of the top 6, I think, I wrote it down earlier, 5 of the top 6 middleweights are not competing with each other in the middleweight division. Gennady Golovkin's fighting at 168 for the undisputed. We don't know what Jamal Charlo's doing. We don't know what Boo Boo Andre's doing. So they're not doing anything in the division. Munguia is talking about going up to 168 to fight. Who was it? Ryder? John Ryder, which is a good fight in a vacuum. But once again, you have a middleweight not trying to beat other middleweights in the division in order to try to pick off a major belt in the division. And we got major belt holders in the division not trying to unify or even fight their mandatories. So when I first heard this fight announced, I said, man, I don't like it. I don't like a welterweight fighting a middleweight. I don't like a guy like Eubank Jr., who could be fighting other top middleweights in the division, could be trying to pick off a big belt, could be trying to fight a belt holder in the division, going to fight a welterweight. And I don't like Conor Benn in this dumpster juice welterweight division that has too much talent in it to be in a stalemate the way it is. Crawford versus Spence. Are they going to fight or are they not going to fight? They've been top 2 in the division for 4 years, locking up the division. Underneath Ugas, you've got all this young talent. Virgil Ortiz, Boots Ennis, Conor Benn, Stanionis, Butayev, Cody Crowley. All these guys in the division, young talent trying to come up with nobody to fight to come up on. And on top of that, I'm being told that they can't fight each other because they're all at the same point in their career, and that's too much of a risk. So we've got a stalemate of a division that's locked that needs to be unlocked. And Conor Benn says, I'm going to go fight this middleweight. So that's why I hated this fight from the jump when it was being rumored. But then I see this fight announced. And I keep my ears to the UK streets, both on Twitter and here. And I saw the reaction from the UK fans when this fight was announced. And I'm like, oh, now I get it. Now I get it. This is a huge fight. This is a huge fight. Humongous over there in the UK. You've got boxing royalty over there, and their sons are fighting each other. They've come to terms and say, you know what? I know I'm a welterweight. You're a middleweight. I know this is pretty much out of thin air, but let's meet at 157 with a 165 or 167 rehydration clause and get the UK fans what they didn't know they wanted, but now they know they want. And that's a huge fight out here in the UK. And when I saw this fight announced and I saw the reaction to it, and then when I go on Twitter early this morning and this press conference is going on and I see the numbers that this press conference is doing, the amount of people watching this press conference, and I'm like, oh my God, this fight's big. This fight's big. And as the press conference is going on, the numbers get bigger and bigger and bigger because these dudes are talking trash back and forth to each other. And the trash talking is great. It's great. It's believable. It's believable that Eubank Jr. does not like Conor Benn. It's believable that the Eubank family does not like the Benn family. It's believable that you have boxing royalty here. And as Eubank said, I want to keep the Eubank family above the Benn family. I'm going to treat you like my son in the ring. That's realistic, real life trash talk right there. Believable. And Ben saying, no. That's not how this is going to work. The Benn family is above the Eubank family. And I'm going to show you that in October. That's real trash talk. It's believable. Two guys who hate each other, two families that do not like each other. And they're going to pit their sons against each other. My best fighter versus your best fighter. My best fighter of the family currently versus your best fighter of the family currently. They're going to go at it. And it's believable. And when you see these numbers and when you see the pay-per-view numbers, I believe Brook versus Khan, these two guys were well past their prime. Brook and Khan. Well past their prime. And I think it did 500,000 buys. Insane. And you saw the atmosphere out there. You saw the environment. As Chauncey Pearls said earlier in the chat, they support their fighters out there. They do big numbers out there. They will show up for their fighters. Even if it's a fight well past his prime, they support their fighters out there. The environment comes through the screen. So when you see this fight in October, I'm telling you, it's going to be huge. It's going to do more buys than Khan versus Brook, a good bit more. When I saw the numbers, when I saw the reaction, when I saw the buzz from the UK fans, I said, oh, I was wrong about this fight. I was viewing it strictly as just a boxing fan following these divisions, an American boxing fan looking at it from the outside, looking in, viewing this as an American fight fan, American lenses, looking into the UK boxing scene. And I'm saying I don't want to see a welterweight fight a middleweight. I don't want to see a catchweight fight. I want to see welterweights fighting welterweights, top middleweights fighting top middleweights. These are two divisions that are locked. These are two trash divisions in boxing right now, and they're supposed to be sexy divisions. These are traditional divisions. Traditional divisions. They're supposed to be sexy, and these fighters, welterweights and middleweights, are supposed to act like it. But guess what? As I said, when I'm wrong about something, I come out here and admit it. I did a 180 this morning as I'm watching this press conference. I'm saying this fight, they did the right thing by making this fight. They did the right thing by making this fight. This fight is huge. It's meaningful for these two fighters because this is more than just boxing for them. This is my family is better than your family. I saw it in Eubank Jr. watching this press conference. As Eubank Jr. is talking, and I can tell when dudes are just talking just to talk. We talked about Tyson Fury earlier. Tyson Fury is not serious when he's saying, I'm flying to Iceland to go hunt this tough man down. He's not serious when he's saying, I'm fighting Chisora a third time. Not serious. And we know this. He's not serious when he's saying he's retiring. He knows the WBC is not going to strip him. He knows he can use this as leverage to get either Usyk or AJ to come off of more money on the negotiations. You can tell when dudes are being serious about something. And when I'm watching Eubank Jr. saying, I watched as a little kid what your dad put my dad through. I watched the depression that my dad went through and the anger that my dad went through and the sadness that my dad went through when your dad was putting my dad through this stuff. As I'm watching him train and beat himself up and all to fight your dad. You can tell he's serious. You can tell these dudes are serious in defending their family name. So this isn't just boxing. This isn't just welterweight, middleweight. This isn't number 7 welterweight not competing in his division to go fight a catchweight fight. This isn't number 6 middleweight not competing in middleweight to go fight a catchweight against a smaller guy. That's not what this is. It's something deeper than how I was viewing it as just a boxing fan. And being that it's something deeper, that makes me interested. That right there gets me interested because I'm like, this fight means a lot to these two dudes. This means there are some things that do mean more than just a belt. As a boxing fan, I often talk about this sport having to resemble a sport. And in order to do that, you have to have guys in the division striving to get the belts that matter within the division. 4 belts within a division, you try to pick off one of those belts and you try to unify those belts. And once you unify those belts and pick off belts, then you defend those belts within the division. And that's becoming a lost art in boxing as you have more guys saying, you know what, I'm not worried about the belts. I don't want the responsibility that comes along with that. And then when guys do get the belts, they either vacate them or they move up and wait as soon as they pluck off all the belts. But some things do mean more than the belts. And for Benn versus Eubank Jr., that is the case. For Benn, he wants to badly beat Eubank Jr. Eubank Jr. badly wants to beat Conor Benn. I could see it come through the screen this morning, and I'm all in. I'm all in. For 5,000 time the Gypsy retired. Conor versus Eubank Jr. seems like it's going to be a barn burner. Salute my guy, Calix. Remy, appreciate you. Always coming through, my brother. Mi gente. And yeah, it's going to be a barn burner too. I can't envision this not being a good fight, is the thing. There's too much on the line. It's a good stylistic matchup in that I'm interested to see what the dude, the welterweight coming up, who doesn't have to shed weight, who's not going to have to shed weight. He can come in comfortably, beef up a little bit without trying to lose his speed against a guy who has to completely drain himself. This dude's fought up to super middleweight. He's going to have to completely drain himself to get down to 157, and then he's not going to be able to rehydrate that much because there's a rehydration clause to where he can't weigh more than 10 pounds more within a certain amount of time. So not only is he draining himself to get down to the 157, he has to still continue to monitor his weight up until the fight day. So that's interesting. It's interesting. You can say both guys have an advantage coming into this fight. Eubank Jr. with size, but with attrition, with not having to lose that weight as far as health and speed. And I think also Conor Benn has the higher ceiling out of the two fighters. He has the higher ceiling. And he's closer to his prime than Eubank Jr. I believe Conor Benn is either entering his prime or hasn't yet got there yet. And Eubank Jr. is on the other side of his prime. Boxing is sport, but it's also entertainment. There's a thin line between, but one of the reasons I watch boxing is the entertainment value. It doesn't always have to be about the sport, and that's okay. And you're right. You're right. If a fight makes sense and it's the much bigger fight monetarily, I get it. And I can give those fighters a pass, at least for one fight. So even if I want to see Conor Benn versus Virgil Ortiz Jr., even if I'd rather see that, even if I'd rather see Eubank Jr. versus let's say Jamal Charlo, I can give these dudes a pass for this one fight because this is a much bigger fight than those. And also, it's not just a novelty fight. This isn't Mayweather versus Conor McGregor. This isn't just a circus act just to get some money, or as Floyd would say, rob the bank heist. This is meaningful, and that's what I'm talking about as far as me being fully in. I watched the press conference, and I don't watch press conferences. I watched it this morning, and I'm seeing these two dudes talk to each other, and the trash talking was A+ between these two guys. And it's not because it's coming off as WWE. It's not. That's the point. These are two dudes sitting about 10 feet away from each other, and they don't like each other, and they don't like the other family. The Benn family is saying, I don't like the Eubank family. The Eubank family is saying, I don't like the Benn family. We're going to figure this out. We're boxing royalty. I saw what your dad put my dad through. I know how badly my dad wants me to win this fight. This is a meaningful fight. So I say to myself, as a boxing fan, how can I not be down for that? This fight is absolutely huge. You're right. Team Batman Boxing in the building. I need to watch that presser. It's a great presser. And that's another thing. Like, I talk about how much I hate pay-per-views. And I hope the pay-per-view model fails, and I stick by that. But the one thing that Eddie does that these other promoters are not doing right now is he knows how to put on an event. He knows how to promote an event. And even though he's giving me pay-per-views when he promised to not give me pay-per-views, and I'm still pissed off about that, and I'll be dropping videos after video about that. He's still at least giving me meaningful pay-per-views. If AJ versus Usyk 2 is a pay-per-view, it's meaningful. Canelo versus Golovkin 2 or 3, meaningful. This fight, meaningful. He's at least, the pay-per-views are at least resembling pay-per-views. And that's the difference when it comes to the PBC, is these pay-per-views aren't resembling your old-fashioned traditional pay-per-views. And I'm being told by people who work for promoters on Twitter that you're not understanding the business of boxing. The pay-per-view model was not set up just for big fights. The pay-per-view model was set up so you can continue to see the big name fighters fight. Because if this fighter isn't in a pay-per-view, we can't fit this in the budget. So either you want to watch your favorite fighter fight or you don't. So that's what they're telling me. But what I'm telling them back is I didn't build this model. I didn't build this system. They did. And I know they're lying to me, by the way. And also, I know you made money off of this fight, 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 this fight. You made money off of 19 straight fights, yet you want me to play the small violin when your 20th matchup doesn't make money, when your 20th matchup is in the green. There's a reason Bob's still there. There's a reason Eddie's in this business. There's a reason Al's in this business. There's a reason Leonard's in this business. They're all making money, and they're making money off of a system that they built that they're complaining about. They're mad at me for complaining about the system that they built. It's not my fault. Go make the fight. I'm not the one who built this pay-per-view model that you're complaining about now. You gave the fighter a humongous minimum. You gave Deontay Wilder a humongous minimum that you can't fit in your budget, so now you have to put him in pay-per-view. And you're telling me I have to appreciate the pay-per-view or go kick rocks. Go away. That's what you're telling me. Be careful what you wish for. And it's not the promoters that I'm getting angry with. It's not the promoters I'm getting aggravated with. It's the fans who get in the way of me complaining to the promoter. Because I see, when you go on Twitter, you can see your engagement numbers. And I know they're reaching when I put out these videos on Twitter, and anybody who follows me on Twitter, they know, the numbers that my videos put up on Twitter. And I know they're reaching managers and promoters, but then I have the fans of these managers and promoters, which is a new thing, by the way. We didn't used to have fanagers. We didn't used to have fans of managers and promoters. We had fans of fighters. But now I have PBC fans. PBC fans. Get a hold of that. PBC fans. Fans of a promotional agency coming at me on Twitter and telling me, shut up. Don't complain about the fight. Don't complain about the pay-per-views. If you don't want to watch the pay-per-view, just don't watch it. Stop complaining. No, I don't think I will. I think I'm going to keep complaining. Because the only way we stop getting pay-per-views is, one, if we complain, and two, the numbers go down. Which we know the numbers are going down, which is why they're putting on cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, more low-budget pay-per-views. This is why the pay-per-views are getting, the odds for the pay-per-views are getting wider. It's why you're having a B-side who is a much bigger underdog each fight, each pay-per-view. Look at the PBC pay-per-views. Look at the betting odds going into the PBC pay-per-views. Look at Keith Thurman versus Matty Obadios. Look at Tank Davis versus Raleigh on the Spectrum Romero. And look at what Deontay Wilder versus Helenius is going to be. Look at what Tank Davis versus whoever his next opponent is going to be. And every once in a while, they'll give us a good one. Possibly Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford. Possibly. But I don't understand why you're capping for these dudes when they're giving you terrible pay-per-views. The product is getting worse. And the amount of money you have to put out to access the product is getting higher. It's like going to a restaurant and one day you go and you get your fine wine and your steak and you're able to sit down and have a $90 meal. The next time you go, you're paying $110 for a pork chop and some Sprite. The next time you go, you're paying $50 for an appetizer. And by the time you got your bill, it's $160. And you're like, what the hell's going on with this restaurant? They promised me free boxing for all in 2015. And in 2022, I'm getting pay-per-view for all. And not only am I giving pay-per-view, because DAZN did the same thing, but DAZN promised me subscription, you get access to all these fighters, no pay-per-views. They lied about that. Not surprising. But at least, like I said, the difference there is DAZN is at least giving me a decent product when it comes to pay-per-view. It still resembles somewhat of a pay-per-view system. But with the PBC, What am I getting? I'm getting mismatches that should be on a main event or shouldn't happen at all. And I'm getting them on pay-per-view. The world is going one way, boxing is going the other. I can sit down on a Saturday morning on college football season a couple weeks from now, and I can access every single college football game in the country. There's a reason I live an hour away from Tiger Stadium, yet I don't go to LSU games. It's because the TV product is too good. I have access to everything. I can tell you the quarterback from every team in the country because I'm sitting there and watching every game, multiple screens up, my phone up as well. My neighbor's coming over. We're all watching the game. We all have access to a great product, and it's an accessible product. It's inclusive. The issue that a lot of sports have is they're too exclusive when it comes to participating. I went to play golf on Sunday, $70 for 18 holes. I lost my glove, I lost my shoes, and I lost my putter I realized before I went to play golf. I went to Academy, I spent $150 just to get those 3 items. Golf is too expensive for kids to get into. Baseball as well. If you don't believe me, if you have kids, go to Academy, try to buy a bat, a helmet, a glove, pants, shirt, and then you got to buy, you got to put them in a league and pay money there. It's an exclusive sport, but that's just for participating. Gary Vee has a video out there when he talks about the demise of baseball. And he's saying in the video, you used to be able to name every single player on a team. Now you ask people who the top 5 baseball players in the country are in Major League Baseball, they're not going to be able to tell you. They're not going to be able to tell you. He pulled up the best player in the league, Trout, and he says if Trout could go down as one of the best baseball players ever. He walks in this room, a lot of people aren't going to know who he is, and that's because a decade ago plus, baseball did this thing where they put everything behind a paywall, monetized everything. No free content on YouTube. They see free content. Major League Baseball, they take it down. Everything is monetized. It's called BAM, B-A-M. They monetized everything, and in doing so, they made their sport more exclusive, more country club. Like golf, more country club. Golf at least doesn't do that. Golf makes it easy to at least watch the sport. But when it came to baseball, they made it tough to watch the sport. Down in New Orleans, when I was a kid, Cubs and Braves. Everybody was a Cubs and a Braves fan. There was a reason for that. I could watch WGN. I could turn on WGN and see all 162 Cubs games for the year for free. I'd sit down, do my homework, 2:30 afternoon. They played all afternoon games. I knew every single Cubs player. Mark Grace, first base. Shawan Dunston, shortstop. Ryan Sandberg, second base. Andre Dawson, right field. I knew the whole pitching rotation. Now I can't name a single Cubs player. And it's because they put everything behind a paywall, monetized everything, made it harder, more difficult to access the athletes. And now we can't name any of them. The demise of baseball. Boxing is going the same way. Boxing is not a country club sport, yet they're treating it like a country club sport. They're making it more exclusive instead of inclusive. It's already hard enough to follow. It's too complex of a fight, of a sport to follow. And they're making it more complex. Go ask people. Like, I can walk around my neighborhood right now. They can name 1 million UFC fighters. They can't name 5 boxers in America. We've got to figure this out. We can't monetize everything. We can't make it more difficult to access fights. We can't charge dudes $75 when they already have a subscription. You got to pay the subscription, then you got to pay for multiple fights behind this paywall. UFC has a pay-per-view every month, but it's structured. You know who's on that card months in advance. You know when the fight's happening. You know it's happening every month, once a month. You know you're going to budget 12 fights for the year, pay-per-view, and then you'll get your non-pay-per-view cards in between that. And by the way, everybody in your neighborhood follows that sport because it's easy to follow. It's easy to have access to. So that's more money in the pot for the fight party. So you might be even paying $5 to $10 for the fight after you split that money up all the way. It's an easy fight to access. It's inclusive. Boxing is becoming a country club sport. It's becoming exclusive. And I warned people about this a year ago on this channel. Two things boxing needs to stay away from. And it actually wasn't on my channel because I wasn't active on this last year, was D-Style's channel. We've got to keep ourselves politically incorrect in this sport. We cannot become a politically correct sport. I appreciate the fact that Ellie Seckbach, as goofy as he is, can go into gyms and access these fighters, put the content on his YouTube video, and you can click on his YouTube videos and get the real deal interviews from these fighters, and they're not afraid to speak their minds. I appreciate that. We can't make this sport politically correct like other sports. It's what's different about our sport. It's unique about our sport. We need to keep it politically incorrect. The second thing we need to do is not to make it a country club sport. Stop making it so exclusive. These fights need to be easier to access. We're pricing lower to middle class people out of this sport. And that's the frustration that I have with the fight fans who get in my way when I'm trying to ask these promoters and managers questions through my videos and take shots at them on my videos. There's a reason I'm throwing graffiti at the sacred cows. There's a reason for it. I'm trying to make the promoters and managers feel bad for what they're doing because they should. They should be. You're pricing people out of the sport. So when fans, like I said, the promoters and managers aren't my biggest enemy right now. It's the fanagers because they're getting in the way. And they're getting in the way just because they don't want you to attack their favorite outfit. And I can't deal with that. You can be a fan of a fighter for any reason you want. Any reason you want. And I don't care. It's fine. It's perfectly fair. Skin color, nationality, all that's fair. You can't come from the same area, all that's fair. But when it goes overboard, and I can even handle this because it's over fighters. They at least bleed and sweat. Where it goes overboard is when you criticize the fighter fairly and the fans start coming at you. But I can handle that with fighters. But when it comes to promoters, like, dude, you realize why in the world are you defending this system? They talked about this in the Matrix. Do you pick the red pill or the blue pill? And a lot of you are picking the blue pill. Why are you getting in the way? Why are you doing Al's bidding? Why are you doing Bob's bidding? Why are you doing Eddie's bidding on Twitter for free? Why? Why? Why do you like them so much that you would do that? Why can't I complain about pay-per-views? That's one of the most horrible answers to something that I get is I put out these videos complaining about the pay-per-views. Like Deontay Wilder shouldn't be fighting Helenius on a pay-per-view. It's a good fight in a vacuum. It's a good comeback fight. Helenius is not bad. It's a decent fighter, but you shouldn't be fighting an old sparring partner on a pay-per-view, number 17 in the division. Shouldn't be happening, especially after pay-per-view after pay-per-view after pay-per-view in boxing already. And I have the PBC fans come at me and say, stop complaining, just don't watch it. It's like, no, man, that's not the way to handle that. Stop complaining, don't watch. Be careful what you wish for, because if you keep telling people that, telling people don't complain, just don't show up, be careful what you wish for, because a lot of people are going to walk out the door. And then you're going to have what's left 10 years from now, about 200 dudes on Twitter tweeting their favorite promoter saying, pay-per-view me harder, daddy, pay-per-view me harder. When they're paying $1,000 for a pay-per-view because there aren't as many people demanding fights anymore, supply and demand. So that price is going to go up. But I'm telling you, you need to stop making this sport so exclusive. This needs to be a more inclusive sport. The sports that are thriving right now are becoming more inclusive, easier to follow, easier to access the athletes. It's too difficult to access these fights right now. Too difficult to access these athletes. And fans of these promotional outfits, first of all, you shouldn't be fans of a promotional outfit. But second, you shouldn't be telling people to go away just because they don't want to watch a fight on pay-per-view. It's one of the dumbest things I've seen. You just don't watch it. Shouldn't you want me to watch your favorite fighter? Because I want to watch Deontay Wilder versus Helenius. I'm just not paying $75 to do it. I'm not doing it. But shouldn't you want me to watch your favorite fighter? Shouldn't you want me to watch PBC events? Team Batman Boxing, but I'll be there trying already. Have it loaded up. Let's see. Much bigger than Con Brook. My channel views since it was announced have mainly been Eubank vids. That's what happened on my channel before. For the other guy, the atmosphere will be unbelievable. There's only 2 big name fighters currently. And that's the thing. Like, I'm not even talking about just fighters. I'm talking about American fighters. And when I ask like the regular Joe around my neighborhood who follows sports, who the top 5 American fighters are, just name 5 of them. They're not gonna be able to do it. And that pains me. It kills me because I know how great of a sport this can be when it resembles a sport. And when I start talking about boxing and they kind of take shots at me, oh, UFC is way better than boxing. It pains me. It pains me because I know this sport is much better. You're a fanboy for a promotional company. You're an idiot. If you're wrong about the original pay-per-view model, then why were the only 1 or 2 of them pay-per-view back then? So and look, I'm not going to name names, but this was a guy who worked for Golden Boy, and he's trying to explain to a fan complaining about pay-per-view on one of my videos, and he's saying, you guys don't understand the pay-per-view model. The pay-per-view model is set up to make a deal with the fighter who has a high minimum in order to get him in the ring. That way he's not inactive. And what I'm saying is, stop telling me. I don't want to hear it. I don't care about the inner workings of your enterprise. All I'm telling you is this fight shouldn't be on pay-per-view. You know what I'm talking about when I say a fight isn't pay-per-view worthy. You know it. Don't tell me that a fight just ends up on a pay-per-view just because of how the business works out. That's not it. The fight has to resemble the price, the market price. So if you're trying to sell me Deontay Wilder versus Helenius for $75, no. You're trying to sell me this wide-eyed fight for $75, no. Big fights should be on pay-per-views. Fights that aren't big should not be on pay-per-view. It's that simple. Stop trying to make this complicated. And if it's otherwise, you built this system. You built it. So don't complain to us. Don't give me that answer. You built this system. You got to figure it out. Stop going into long-term negotiations with networks. That way, this promoter can only work with this network. Because guess what? The promoter can bring the network any kind of crap fight, and the network might have to go along with it because there's nothing better available. Remember when Top Rank and Golden Boy were fighting for spots on the HBO network? Top Rank and Golden Boy were fighting for spots on the Showtime network. That made for a better sport because these promotional companies were fighting with each other in order to get their fights on the network. It made for more competition. The network can sit back and say, we'll go with the Top Rank fight this time, Top Rank card because it's better. We'll go with the Golden Boy card this time because it's better. And it forced the network, it forced the promotional companies to put on better cards because they knew they had to in order to compete. So now we've got Al strictly with Showtime. Now we've got Eddie strictly with DAZN, Oscar strictly with DAZN, Top Rank strictly with ESPN. And it leads to laziness because they don't know, they know they don't have to compete with other promotional companies in order to get their card on that network. And then they take the highest site fee and just sit back and collect the money. They don't have to promote the event properly. And then the fighter doesn't have to self-promote because he's got his minimums that are so high. I remember when Miguel Cotto signed like a $40 million deal with Roc Nation. I'm like, what the hell is this? How are they going to make money off of that? And I was a Miguel Cotto fan. So I'm watching Canelo sign this huge deal. Anthony Joshua sign this huge deal. Deontay Wilder signing a deal with PBC. All these guys signing huge deals with high minimums. And I'm like, how are they going to work this out? How are they going to make money off of this? And now the promotional companies are coming back and telling me and other fans that in order to do that, we have to put on more pay-per-views, or you're not going to be able to see your favorite fighter active. I didn't build this system. You did. You did. That's your fault. Now you got to figure it out. This whole thing needs to unravel some kind of way. And the way is forcing competition. Get away from these long-term network deals between promotional companies and networks. Get away from these high minimums. And I know it makes me anti-fighter when I say this, but the amount of money you're paying these fighters over that period of time, it leads to fans carrying on more of the burden. I gave you the restaurant example earlier. But you're telling me that I now have to pay more money and I'm getting less quality. Yikes. 5 items, $1,000 later. JC in the building. All I know is I lost Chilson for the season on fantasy. Chilson on the fantasy football. Let's see. It's out of control. Boxing is a niche sport. Too many pay-per-views, and it's too hard to get the best to fight the best. You're right. $70 to watch Hellenius take a dive. Sekback corny and cringe sometimes, but he does give us behind-the-scenes reporting. Arguing about networks. We knew that. Let's see what else we got. They still stuck on Pac-Man and Floyd, and that they are. I said Bud Spence. They said, huh? Fighters should always just get paid their worth and what they bring in, not above. That's why we're getting stupid pay-per-views. Bingo. And really, it is that simple. It really is that simple. Too many pay-per-views, and the quality of the pay-per-view is going down. They were trying to bring up an example of 2006 when HBO put on like 10 pay-per-views, and that's too many, but they used the most extreme example because if you went around those years, it was far less than that. But if you look at the example of 2006, they were putting on quality pay-per-views at least. There were quality pay-per-views. Now the promoter and the guy who's working for the promoter tells me that pay-per-view doesn't work that way. You're just getting a pay-per-view when we can't make the numbers work. So either you get the pay-per-view and watch it, or you just don't watch your favorite fighter fight. Because we can't afford to put this fight just behind the paywall. We have to put it behind the extra paywall in order to afford the huge contract that we gave this fighter. And my response to that always is, I didn't make the deal, and I'm not concerned at all with the inner workings of your enterprise. I'm concerned with me as a boxing fan. I want good fights on my TV, and my job is to show up. And my job as a paying customer is to complain when I don't like the quality of what I'm seeing, and I don't want to see other fans step in my way when I'm complaining. I don't want to see other customers at the restaurant when I'm complaining to the chef say, no, stop complaining, just leave. Where else am I supposed to go? That's the only fight on TV that weekend. So where else am I supposed to go? What other restaurant do you want me to go to? Just go home and make a sandwich. Okay, I guess I will. But guess what? I may just stay home and make a sandwich every weekend from now on. I may just go to the restaurant, the football restaurant, and just watch football. Just watch basketball from now on and not watch boxing at all. Is that what you want? Is that what you want? So be careful what you ask for. Promoters Networks, stop with the long-term contracts. Stop with the high contracts, minimums for fighters. It's outrageous. And it's leading us to becoming a country club sport, an exclusive sport where we're pricing out lower to middle income people who we pretend to care about. Everybody pretends to care about the lower and middle class, but I guess not. Guess not. Callis, do you miss the HBO days? HBO Boxing After Dark was sweet. And I was talking about this with somebody the other day. I didn't think I was going to miss HBO as much as I do. I miss the days when I had I had a Showtime deal for a while with DirecTV to where I was paying like $6.99 a month, $4.99 a month for like 12 to 18 months. And they kept allowing me to do it in order to keep my business with DirecTV. But you could pay $27 a month or $23 a month, no matter what, depending on what deal you had, and access Showtime and HBO. And they would give you consistent fights. And then I would get Showbox on Friday nights. And then I would get ESPN Friday night fights. And I understood where to go. I knew where they were going to be, what time they were going to be there every week. And I knew where to go to get certain level of fights. And I missed the days where I could go to ESPN Friday nights and get the guys coming up, or get the entertaining fight between two crossroads fighters in the main event. Same thing on Showbox. And then I could go to HBO Boxing After Dark to see entertaining fights, or the next weekend, HBO Championship Boxing, or Showtime Championship Boxing. I knew where I could go, where I had to go. I knew exactly what I was paying. And now it's just a cluttered mess. And I'm being told I can't complain about anything. But just to recap, Tyson Fury retired for the 80 millionth time. Let me say it this way. I'm pretty sure I can watch Thurman Barrios, Ortiz Martin free on YouTube, and I'm not interested, but those were supposed to be pay-per-views. You're right, James Burrell. You're right. Tyson Fury retired, but he's using it for leverage. Keep that in mind. But a retired fighter should not be ranked. He's going to keep the WBC belt, but a retired fighter should not be ranked. So that now makes Usyk and Joshua 1 and 2 in the division. So my question is, should this be for the lineal championship now? Which I thought number 1, number 2 in the division fight for the ring belt. My opinion, the lineal championship should now go vacant. And the belt, the lineal championship, should now be fought between the number 1 and number 2 guys next weekend. And now they should be lineal champion. And that matters historically. This goes all the way back, generation to generation to generation, all the way back to the genesis of the heavyweight division. This is passed on and passed on and passed on from the very beginning. It's meaningful. And now AJ and Joshua should be fighting for that next weekend. And once again, Benn versus Eubank. Big fight. Huge. Big fight. When it was first rumored, I don't think I quite understood how big this thing was going to end up being. And I'm watching the press conference this morning, and this thing is going to be big. And now I'm excited for it. On that note, man, happy Friday, Teofimo Lopez tomorrow night. And I'll be dropping some videos throughout the weekend as well. Appreciate y'all passing through. God bless. Have a great weekend. Peace.